Rajime is a high school student who has no powers, no girl, no voice, nothing. He is bullied all the time for being very weak. One day, his entire class is summoned to become heroes and save the whole kingdom of crooked beings. But even in this world, Rajime is still a loser, because while his classmates have legendary abilities, all he managed to do was a transmutation, so the best he can do is move rocks. One day, when the class ventures into the labyrinth to train, Rajime tries to defend himself from a monster, but he doesn't have the necessary skill for that. So he ends up being saved by Amanogawa, who decapitates the monster with a single strike. Daisuke shows up just to mock Rajime for being useless. But after that, he gets annoyed because everyone cares about Rajime, even though he's weak. It's almost as if they like him because he's a good person, something Daisuke wouldn't understand. Anyway, Amanogawa's attack revealed some crystals hidden in the wall, and Rajans recognized them as radiant crystals. They are very valuable, but it's strange to find such a large cluster of those stones. That's why he tells everyone to stay away from the area until he can check if it's safe or not. But of course, Daisuke's monkey brain completely ignores the warning, and he goes after the shiny crystal, immediately triggering a trap that teleports everyone to a room full of beasts. Rajans immediately realizes the situation is bad and knows they don't stand a chance of surviving, so he shouts for everyone to reach the staircase as quickly as possible, while he and the guards hold back the monsters. They do their best to keep the monsters away with the magic barrier, but the monster is too strong and easily breaks through the barrier and almost causes the bridge they're on to collapse. If the bridge were destroyed, everyone on it would have fallen to their deaths. But Rajime grabs on and uses one of his transmutation abilities to keep the bridge standing and slow down the monster. But that won't last long, so he tells everyone to escape while they still can. Thanks to him, all his classmates manage to get off the bridge, but the monster starts breaking through Rajime's stones. So Captain Rajans tells everyone to cast spells to buy time for Rajime to get out. Everyone does as instructed, and Rajime starts running off the bridge, but just when it seemed he would be fine, one of the explosions hits Daisuke, making him fall off the bridge, while his classmates watch in horror. Rajime then manages to survive the fall, but is now deep inside the labyrinth. He tries to find the way out, but encounters a monster, a rabbit. Although at first it doesn't seem that dangerous, after seeing it fight, Rajime becomes afraid of losing his life, so he tries to sneak away before being seen, but he accidentally trips, alerting the rabbit to his presence. The rabbit is about to kill him, but it senses something much more terrifying and doesn't want to stick around to find out what it is. Unfortunately for the bunny, it is caught and eaten almost instantly by a giant bear, and after devouring the rabbit, the giant bear turns to Rajime. He does his best to flee, but the bear manages to cut off and devour one of his arms. Rajime tries to run away in desperation, crawling as far as he can, but ends up facing a wall and has nowhere else to go. So, in a desperate act, he starts digging a hole with his transmutation ability to try to hide. The bear continues chasing him, breaking all the blocks, while Rajime frantically places other blocks to try and slow it down. In the end, he manages to reach a connected cave. But even though he managed to escape the bear for now, he's still missing an arm. He's also starving, so he knows he won't last long. The only reason he's still alive is because he was lucky and happened to find a mana crystal, which naturally produces holy water with healing properties. But Rajime's body is still in so much pain that he just wants to die to end his suffering quickly. He starts trying to find someone to blame, and he remembers that one of his classmates' explosions was aimed at him, and Rajime can't think of anyone who would want to kill him. Until at that moment, Daisuke's face appears in his mind, and he realizes Daisuke probably tried to kill him. He remembers that Kaori warned him not to go on the mission the night before because she dreamed something bad might happen to him. So he thinks he should have listened to her. He knows no one is coming to save him, but he doesn't understand why he, of all people, has to suffer like this. First, he was brought to a world against his will, and now he's been betrayed by his classmates and left to fend for himself against terrifying monsters. That's when Rajime pulls himself together, because he swears to himself that he will make it home, no matter what happens, and anything or anyone in his way will be killed. He will do whatever it takes to survive, and the first thing he needs to deal with is his hunger. So he decides to hunt. Hajime steps out and provokes 2 wolves, luring them into chasing him. The plan works, and the wolves follow Hajime all the way through the cave, but they don't notice the trap he set, and they end up falling straight into a hole. Right after, Hajime starts throwing rocks at them like a madman until they're dead. It's not the prettiest method, but it gets the job done. Then he begins to eat. and the taste is absolutely disgusting. But even worse, he starts feeling an unbearable pain because all the monster meat cells begin to interfere with his DNA. After all, he's eating monster flesh. Hajime drops to his knees, worried that the meat might be fatal. But then, his body begins to undergo intense changes. Normally, this would have killed a regular human, but thanks to the holy water nearby, he survives the ordeal. And now, his body feels much lighter than before. He gets up and looks at his reflection, only to realize his hair has turned white from all the stress, and his eyes are now red. Basically, he's gone full Kaneki mode. As a result of the mutation, he now has a new mana manipulation skill, and he also inherited the lightning field ability the wolves used. He still can't use it as well as they did, but it's enough to generate electricity to cook the rest of the meat. The smell is still terrible, but at least he doesn't have to eat it raw anymore. These new abilities also let him analyze rocks just by touching them, and after some searching, he finds something called explosive ore. This rock can be crushed and triggered by heat, basically turning into gunpowder. Hajime figures he can craft a proper weapon with it. A weapon would make life down here a lot easier, so he immediately begins crafting one using the explosive rocks. He uses transmutation to form a gun barrel made from tar-hard stones. Then he loads it with bullets made from the explosive ore and powers everything up using his lightning abilities, creating a high-velocity weapon that fires explosive rounds. He figures a weapon like that needs a name and calls it Donner. With it, he can now easily kill monsters, like that killer rabbit from earlier. Afterwards, he drags the rabbit corpse back to the cave and eats it. But even then, the meat still tastes awful. On the bright side, eating the monster boosts his level and grants him new skills, like quick step and aerodynamics, which massively improve his mobility. Now he feels strong enough to take on anything, but he still has unfinished business: the bear monster that ate his arm. So he heads straight to the area where that bear is. As soon as he spots it, he uses aerodynamics to leap in close and opens fire mid-air. Unfortunately, the bear counters and knocks him down, injuring him. But even though things look bad, Hajime had a backup plan. He pulls out a flash grenade and throws it straight at the bear's face, blinding it with a flashbang. And while the bear's stunned, he gets his revenge. He shoots its arm off, then bites the severed limb to assert dominance. Finally, he ends it by shooting a round straight into its skull. After eating as many beasts as possible, Hajime is now so powerful that weaker monsters no longer give him experience. They're not a threat anymore, but even so, he hasn't found an exit. So instead of waiting around, he decides to go deeper into the labyrinth. He remembers the labyrinth has 100 floors, but there are no signs or floor markers, so he has no clue how far in he is or how long it'll take to reach the bottom. He starts digging downward and eventually finds a cave, but as soon as he lights his lamp, he comes face to face with a lizard, and just from seeing it, he freezes in place. He hides behind a rock to slow the petrification effect, using a potion, but the lizard keeps coming, so he needs to think fast. When the lizard climbs onto the rock, Hajime throws a small bottle, blinding the creature. Now that the lizard's blind, it's an easy target. Hajime doesn't hesitate and unloads bullets into it. He pushes forward through the labyrinth, getting stronger with each new monster he eats. Meanwhile, back on the surface, his classmates return to report to the king what happened. Rogan explains to the king that things didn't go as planned. Since Daisuke couldn't keep his hands to himself, they all ended up transported to the 65th floor, and it's a miracle any of them survived. Unfortunately, one of the heroes, Hajime, wasn't so lucky. The news of Hajime's death begins to spread, and it's a disaster for the kingdom. So the king orders Rogan and the others to act as if it never happened. Shizuku feels awful about everything and heads to the courtyard to clear her head. While training, she notices Daisuke nearby, looking nervous, like he did something wrong, and is worried about getting caught. She remembers how back on Earth, Daisuke used to pick on Hajime constantly, and now that she thinks about it, he was probably jealous of all the attention Kaori gave to Hajime. So she briefly considers the possibility that Daisuke used explosive magic on him, but quickly dismisses it. After all, no one would be petty or stupid enough to kill a classmate over a crush, right? Shizuku then checks on Kaori in her room, and Kaori finally wakes up from her coma. She was unconscious for 5 days, so her memory's still hazy. All she remembers is that they were fighting in the labyrinth. She asks Shizuku if Hajime is okay, but Shizuku doesn't answer, and that silence says everything Kaori needs to know. She realizes Hajime didn't come back with them and is devastated, unable to accept that her best friend might really be gone. Meanwhile, Hajime is still pushing through the labyrinth. with no clue how long it'll take to reach the end. He comes across a large door and wonders if it might give him some clue about which floor he's on. He crafts a few more bullets and gets ready to enter, but unfortunately, he has no idea how to open it. He tries using transmutation to break it down, but he's immediately repelled. Then, two statue-like cyclopses beside the door come to life. Hajime had predicted something like this, so he shoots one straight in the head and kills it instantly. Next, he takes on the second one, but his bullets have no effect. The Cyclops seems to be using a magic barrier that blocks his shots, but Hajime has a solution. He keeps shooting non-stop until the barrier breaks, making the Cyclops an easy target, and then he blasts it in the eye. Once that's over, he checks to see what was worth guarding with two Cyclopses. He cuts them open and finds mana stones inside. Turns out the Cyclopses were the key to unlocking the door. He inserts the mana stones into the door, and it unlocks, revealing a glowing cube in the center of the room. As the glow fades, he sees a beautiful girl trapped inside it, but it screams trap, so Hajime apologizes and turns to leave. The girl calls out to him and asks for help, saying she's been imprisoned. Hajime isn't naive. He knows normal people don't end up sealed in glowing cubes at the bottom of a labyrinth, so he assumes she must have done something terrible to deserve it. But she says he's wrong. She was betrayed. The word betrayal hits Hajime hard, and suddenly he feels deeply concerned for her. He asks what happened. Even if she was betrayed, locking someone away like this seems excessive. The girl explains she's vampire royalty, born with incredible power, which she always used to help her people. But one day, her ministers told her she was no longer needed and they would rule in her place. She didn't mind giving up the throne peacefully, but her ministers feared her power, and since they couldn't kill her, they sealed her in the cube instead. Hajime asks what she means by couldn't kill her. She says one of her powers lets her regenerate instantly, so most physical damage has no effect. Her second power allows her to manipulate mana without using magic circles. Now Hajime understands why she was feared, but it's too late. He's emotionally invested. He decides to free her. He puts his hand on the cube and uses transmutation to try breaking it. It's not easy. The old Hajime never would have managed it, but with his current strength, he eventually shatters the cube, freeing the girl. Now that she's free, Hajime asks her name, but she doesn't want to use the name given to her by her betrayers, so she asks Hajime to give her a new one. He decides to call her Yue because she reminds him of the moon. Yue is thrilled by the name and jumps into Hajime's arms to thank him. But things had been going too well, so of course, something goes wrong. Suddenly spikes are launched at him from the shadows, leaving Hajime badly wounded. With Yue's help, the spikes are removed from his back, and he gives her the bear hide as the two of them face their first enemy together, a giant scorpion monster guarding the exit. Hajime shoots it, but its shell is too hard. As he pauses to think, Yue leaps onto his back and bites his neck for blood. It startles him, but he trusts her. He uses magic to create a stone wall for cover, while the scorpion tries to break through using its own magic. Yue then unleashes a blue flame that damages the scorpion's shell. Not enough to kill it, but enough for Hajime to follow up. Their second coordinated attack hits the upper shell, piercing it and striking the beast fatally. Celebrating their win, they gather around a fire to cook the scorpion meat. Yue learns that all vampires were wiped out 300 years ago. She says the labyrinth was built by beings called Mavericks, who rebelled against the gods and tried to destroy the world. They failed and fled into these labyrinths. Some say they're hiding on the lowest level. Now their goal is clear. The Maverick at the bottom has the key to escape. Using the scorpion's shell, Hajime creates high-caliber bullets for an anti-tank weapon he forges from his own gun. He names it Schlagen. Curious about these strange concepts, Yue asks for his side of the story. As he explains everything that's happened so far, she's heartbroken to hear it. Knowing he just wants to return home makes her even sadder. Yue no longer has a place to go back to. Seeing her reaction, Hajime invites her to join him on his journey. She accepts without hesitation. Back at the kingdom, a new expedition is being prepared, led by their level 50 classmate Amanogawa. Meanwhile, Hajime and Yue are running from a horde of T-Rexes, seemingly endless, and each with a strange flower on its head. They suspect the monsters are being controlled by a parasitic mind. They manage to shake off the dinosaurs temporarily and begin searching for the hive mind controlling them. Along the way, Yue doesn't hesitate to drink more of Hajime's blood. They arrive at an entrance guarded fiercely by the dinos, a sign they're close to their goal. Inside the cave, green spores float on the wind, and suddenly Yue loses control and attacks Hajime as a flower blooms on her head. A plant-like humanoid hiding behind her uses her as a shield and blasts Hajime with magic, exposing him to the spores. The monsters think they've won, as a flower sprouts on Hajime's head, but the immunity he built up by devouring so many beasts lets him resist it. The flower wilts, but Yue is still being used as a shield. She begs Hajime to shoot anyway, and he doesn't hesitate, killing the creature with 2 bullets. His total lack of concern for her safety makes her furious, and she punches him repeatedly. They rest by a fire as Hajime eats some dead monsters. Yue leans in and says she needs more of his blood, claiming it tastes amazing. She lunges at him and says it's time to eat, thanking him for the meal. Then they descend even deeper into the labyrinth, reaching the door to the Maverick's chamber. Behind it lies a huge room lined with crystal pillars, and another door at the far end. When they pass through it, a giant summoning circle appears, and from it, a massive Hydra emerges, blocking their path. Each of the Hydra's heads has a unique color and magic corresponding to it. The duo keeps attacking, but they quickly realize all the damage is being healed by the white head's magic. Hajime and Yue try to focus their attacks, but the other heads notice and place themselves in front, shielding the white head from any damage. Hajime draws the Hydra's attention, giving Yue a chance to fire a powerful spell at the white head. However, her attack gets blocked by the yellow head, which specializes in defense. After her failed attack, the Hydra's black head casts an illusion spell, making Yue believe she's been sealed again and that Hajime abandoned her. Her screams lead Hajime to grab her and snap her out of the illusion. Yue recovers and tells Hajime what she saw, and then Hajime kisses her for the first time, reassuring her they'll win this fight and make it back to the surface together. No matter what happens, their bond is now stronger than ever, and they come up with a strategy to bring the monster down. Yue blasts the beast with a powerful spell, while Hajime grabs the Skullender, his gun, and fires a devastating light spell that wipes out all the heads at once, except for the blue, red, and green ones. Without the white head, they stand no chance against Yue's celestial fire, which eradicates the beast, or at least that's what they thought. The final head, Silver, appears and targets Yue, but Hajime jumps in and blocks the blast using his rifle and as much defensive magic as he can muster. Smoke fills the air as his rifle disintegrates, and Hajime collapses to the ground, unconscious. Yue grabs him and creates a barrier to protect them from the attacks that follow. She drags him far enough away and gives him every drop of sacred crystal water she can find, but he still doesn't wake up. She grabs Hajime's gun and rushes toward the beast alone, but her bullets can't pierce the creature's skin, and she's taken down too. Her cries for Hajime aren't in vain. Hajime grabs Yue and pulls her away from danger. That last attack cost him an eye, but he's clearly stronger. And to protect the one he loves, he releases an immense rage that drives him to rise and strike back to save her and crush the monster. They launch a combo attack, where Hajime brings the ceiling down on the Hydra and transmutes it into a conductive cage, while Yue fires a bluish flame that gets amplified by the trap around the monster. The Hydra dies under their combined power, and the two finally get a moment to rest. Meanwhile, the group rescued by Kuki keeps moving through the labyrinth, still unaware of their classmates' survival, except for Kaori, who can still feel that Hajime is alive. Bandaged but fully functional, Hajime wakes up with a strange feeling, a certain softness in the palm of his hand. To his surprise, he finds himself naked in bed with Yue, inside a cage surrounded by forest. He pinches her cheeks and zap shocks her awake. Once she realizes he's okay, Yue hugs him, eyes full of tears. Afterward, he remembers how Yue healed him. They realize they're now in the Maverick's domain. They grab some clothes and head toward a lone mansion in the forest, under an illusory sky with mythic day and night cycles above them. Inside the building, they find many locked rooms. On the third floor, they find an open room that lights up as they enter, and right in front of them is Oshka, a skeleton in fine clothes, gazing at a ritual circle in the center of the room. Hajime steps into the circle seeking answers, and it glows as the skeleton reveals the image of the man he once was, Oshka, the rebel who built this labyrinth. Oshka congratulates them on reaching this chamber and reveals that he's just a recording, meant only to explain what he and his order did after learning the truth about this world. Meanwhile, back on floor 65 of the labyrinth, Kuki's group is ready for round 2 on the bridge against the behemoth and his army of skeletons. They show up, but instead of panicking, everyone spreads out and takes on their roles in the battle. Attackers launch spells and supporters do their job, defending from the monster's assault while dishing out their own attacks. Their combined effort pays off, and they successfully defeat the monster, causing the skeletons to crumble as the group reunites after their first clear victory. Back to Hajime, Oscar's recording begins to say goodbye. Oscar tells him he'll now inherit his powers and hopes he won't use them for evil. A surge of information floods Hajime's mind. The Mavericks were actually liberators, and now he possesses an ancient form of magic, creation magic, that lets him give magical properties to raw materials and create artifacts. The first thing he does is teach Yue how to use it. She learns but can't craft any artifacts. They spend the next 2 days snooping around the mansion. They find a book that tells them how to clear the remaining labyrinths, which will also grant them more ancient magic, which might help them return home. Later, the two take a bath together, where Yue confesses her love for Hajime, who's still awkward and shy about that kind of talk. Using several tools inside the mansion, Hajime crafts all kinds of gear to help on their journey. Vehicles, weapons, and a crystal to replace his eye and arm, all powered by creation magic. After 2 months of prep, Hajime puts a ring on Yue, sealing their relationship. The two are finally ready to leave the labyrinth, with an unbreakable bond to face whatever the world throws at them, even the gods standing in their way. We then cut to the Heisen Gorge, where a busty bunny girl is surrounded by dinosaurs. She starts running and crying out for someone to save her. Just then, Hajime and Yue's ritual circle appears, and the two pop out of nowhere, scaring the dinosaurs away. They celebrate their successful escape while gazing into each other's eyes. Their cute moment is interrupted by a hyper bunny beast woman who runs toward them before tripping and getting her head stuck in the ground. They try to ignore the nuisance and move on, but the bunny girl clings to Hajime, begging them to save her family. They completely ignore her plea and keep walking, until a giant two-headed monster blocks Hajime's path. He takes it down effortlessly, leaving the bunny girl stunned. She introduces herself as Shay, eldest daughter of the Halia Beastfolk tribe. She begs them to help her people, who are on the verge of extinction. After much insisting, they finally agree to investigate. But Shay mocks Yue's smaller chest, and of course, she nearly gets blown up by a magical blast. Shay was exiled from her tribe for having magical powers. She can see possible futures, and it's that power that helped her predict where the two would show up. She also foresaw the ruin of her tribe, and the duo agrees to help. On one condition, Shay has to help guide them through the sea of trees to the next labyrinth. They arrive at the Beastman's village just in time to save everyone from an attack by flying dinosaurs. Shay's tribe had isolated themselves from other beast folk to support her, especially after her magical nature was revealed, something super taboo among beastmen, who don't use magic. Their weakness and lack of magic made their survival almost impossible, but with Hajime Dayui's help, everything is solved easily. Afterwards, Shay offers to join their journey, but the two reject her immediately. Instead, realizing no one in the tribe is ready to fight, they decide to spend the next few days training them to survive. After intense training, Shay learns how to enhance her physical combat abilities and once again asks to join the couple, saying she's in love with Hajime. At that moment, her tribe returns, now transformed into bloodthirsty assassins, ready to defend themselves, maybe even a bit too well. Finally, the Beastfolk tribe guides the couple to the great tree inside the Sea of Trees. There, a plaque asks them to present 2 more symbols like the ring Oscar gave them. The symbols are regeneration, and one formed by bonds, and they're the keys to opening the door ahead. Knowing what they need, the duo sets off to find the remaining labyrinths. Shay remembers a story her mom told her about a white shadow hiding in the Sea of Trees. The story's moral was that she shouldn't fear what's different, and that one day she'd meet people just as special as her. That's why she insists on going with the couple, keeping it a secret. After succeeding in her training with Yue, Hajime lets her join them, though he tries one last time to push her away, but fails. With a new party member, the trio says goodbye to the Beastfolk tribe and continues their journey in search of more labyrinths. Still in Heisen Gorge, the trio looks for the entrance to the next labyrinth. Shay stumbles upon a strange symbol, and when they gather around it, a voice echoes, welcoming them to Milady Racing's thrilling fun labyrinth. Thanks to dumb luck, Shay once again falls onto a secret entrance. You already know, this labyrinth's packed with traps. Spikes shoot from the walls, freaking Shay out. Besides physical traps, Milady's voice recording alone is torture to their ears. From boulders rolling through narrow hallways, to spinning saw blades on both sides, bottomless pits, and even buckets falling straight on Shay's head. It's an SSS-ranked danger zone, but nothing our 3 adventurers can't handle. After a while and lots of Milady's teasing, They reach a familiar room, the place where it all began. After running in circles, they reach a room with the final door and armor decorating both walls. No surprise, the armor comes to life like Resident Evil 4 and attacks them. There's nothing special about them, but they seem endless, so the trio runs to the door and jumps onto a moving platform. It brings them face to face with a giant iron golem with a smiley face drawn on it. This golem claims to be Milady Racing, and according to Oscar's notes, Milady is just as dead as him, but the golem insists otherwise. Milady's tone shifts from playful to serious when she asks Hajime about his ultimate goal. He tells her he just wants to return to his world, after the god of this one dragged him here. Hajime asks her if the ancient magic that allows world hopping is inside this labyrinth. Milady goes back to her playful tone and refuses to answer, so our hero unleashes a missile barrage. The battle begins. Her armor's thick, making it hard to reach the core. Her attacks cover wide areas, but are easy to dodge. Hajime lands a strong blow that drops the golem, giving Yue a chance to freeze it in place. Hajime uses a drill to plant a metal shaft into the golem's core. Shay keeps hammering it down until it pierces the armor and destroys the core. As the golem's power fades, Milady warns Hajime, if he stays on this path, he'll face the bastard gods they once fought and become a godslayer himself. She says goodbye and vanishes. Inside Milady's chamber, the trio finds another small golem. Milady uses it to greet them one last time. After a few jokes, she teaches the group gravity magic. For now, only Yue is strong enough to use it, even with minimal training. With Hajime holding the second ring and more valuable resources, Milady ejects them from the labyrinth and sends them back to the surface. As Shay starts drowning, Hajime performs mouth-to-mouth to revive her. She uses the chance to kiss him passionately, but he forcefully pushes her away and throws her back in the water. Soaking wet from the experience, the trio heads to a nearby inn for the night. Yue and Shay fight over who gets to share a room with Hajime, ending with Shay getting shot multiple times after loudly declaring she'd take his virginity in the room. At the Adventurers Guild, Guildmaster Shang welcomes Hajime and his companions. He'd already heard of their insane feat crossing the Heisen Gorge with ease. He wants to hire them for a job. Hajime declines at first, but is convinced to at least hear the terms. Their identities would be kept secret to maintain a low profile. The request is to locate a missing group who led a research mission in the northern mountains, specifically Will, the son of Count Kudeta. Hajime agrees, asking for a status plate for each of them and support from the guildmaster if needed. The trio wastes no time and heads to the last known location of the missing group. Along the way, they stop in a village where Aiko, the class teacher, had taught the locals how to grow rice fields, for which the place is now famous. Hungry for the food from their homeland, Hajime's group stops there, where the teacher and some students are resting. Before all that, Hajime was presumed dead. Everyone who knew him before the labyrinth incident believed he had died. However, the mention of his name by Yue and Shay, along with his familiar voice, makes it obvious to Aiko, even with his drastic change in appearance. He still tries to deny it, but the teacher is certain, so he ends up admitting it. He gives very vague answers about what happened since he was last seen. He's interrupted by one of the knights, escorting Aiko and her students. These knights end up insulting Shay and Yue, and as a response, they get shot in the shoulder. One of the students listening to all of this was someone who admired Hajime, after he saved his life back on the bridge where it all began. Before moving on, Hajime made it very clear to everyone around that he had cut all ties with the group he came to this world with, and also with anyone working with them. His goals were his alone, and no one should stand in his way. Later that night, Aiko was reflecting on the encounter with Hajime, but is interrupted by none other than him. Then, more privately, he reveals to Aiko what he's learned so far, and why he decided to sever all ties with the kingdom. A long time ago, this world was devastated by endless wars between three races. The god who ruled them all made everyone believe there was peace between humans, demons, and beastmen. But in reality, he was just a puppet master, inciting conflict for pure entertainment. The Liberators were a group of people who realized who was really behind all this chaos and decided to free the world from its oppressors. However, this god realized their intentions and turned the church and humanity against them, labeling them as traitors. Swearing to protect their people, the Liberators didn't retaliate. They're the ones now known as the Mavericks. The few members who survived the purge fled to labyrinths they created, hoping someone would be able to finish what they set out to do. Hajime admitted he didn't care about the mad god. He just wanted to obtain the ancient magic needed to leave this world. Before leaving, Aiko told him that the healing priestess Kaori had not given up her search for him, and that's when he revealed what happened to him wasn't an accident, but a deliberate attempt on his life by one of his classmates, which shocked her. The next morning, Hajime's group is stopped by Aiko and her students, who insist on joining them so she can hear more details of what happened. Seeing that avoiding them wouldn't work, he creates a vehicle for everyone involved and heads for the mountains. The group enters the mountains in search of Kondo's son and one of Aiko's students, who had wandered off on his own. Using drones he made with his creation magic, Hajime tracks a burned field, with obvious signs of battle, and a crater left by a giant creature. They move toward the human signal, further into the mountains. Behind a waterfall and inside a cave, they find Will, Kondo's son, with light injuries. He's very happy to finally be found. Will tells them about his terrifying experience, and how his group was massacred by another group of monsters, the worst of them being a black dragon. Hajime then grabs him by the collar and gives a motivational speech, pulling him to his feet. They continue on past the red moon hanging above them. That's when they hear a sound. Knowing danger was imminent, that same black dragon approaches and starts attacking the group. It then releases a wave of flames that pins Hajime to the ground, while he protects his teacher and her students. In that moment, Yue uses her celestial calamity to stop the dragon and bring it down. Shay follows with a hammer attack, but fails. Hajime orders Yue to protect the group so he can focus on the attack. The dragon seems to be targeting Will, but the threat Hajime poses quickly forces it to focus on him instead. The two face off, with Hajime clearly holding the upper hand, using his vast arsenal. Soon after, the dragon falls to the ground, and Hajime prepares a machine he used to pierce Malaid's golem's armor to end the beast once and for all. The dragon even tries to escape, but Shay's hammer knocks it down immediately. Hajime's knowledge of dragons leads him to believe that the only way to deal real damage to the beast is by attacking the one place with no scales, its rear. Wasting no time, Hajime grabs a giant rod and shoves it where you already know, only to be suddenly interrupted by female screams. The dragon then declares that she is a daughter of the Dragon Clan and says she'll reveal her intentions if Hajime removes the stake. But Hajime doesn't care and just wants answers before easing the dragoness's suffering. The dragon explains that she was headed to a nearby region to investigate otherworldly travelers. While resting during the journey, a man in a black robe cast a mind control spell on her as she slept, forcing her to attack and kill Will and his companions. Yue then asks Hajime to spare the dragon, since the deaths weren't her own doing. The dragoness herself begs him, saying her mana is almost gone, and that if she returns to human form like that, she'll die. So Hajime pulls out the stake, and the dragon returns to her human form, now with a new and very peculiar personality. She introduces herself as Claris, a member of the Claris clan of the dragon lineage. She warns the group that an army of thousands of monsters, led by men in black robes, is approaching the city. Hajime's drones confirm it. Around 60,000 enemies are coming in 2 days. But Hajime's mission is to save Will, so he refuses to fight the army or the mysterious man behind it all, because that's not his problem. He heads to the city to return Will safely, now joined by a new pervy, masochistic dragoness, who unfortunately becomes part of the group. Aiko begs her student to help fight the monster army and save the city from destruction. Unable to refuse his teacher's request, Hajime agrees and begins preparations to stop the attack. They set up defenses, build barricades, evacuate women and children, while those who stay to fight eat and rest in preparation. Night falls as Hajime cleans his rifle. Yuka shows up and thanks him for saving her life that day on the bridge at the labyrinth. Hajime doesn't give it much weight, but offers a few words of encouragement. Then, the pervy presence approaches, and Claris appears to ask Hajime a question. She wants to know if his journey will continue after this battle, and if she, by any chance, can go with him. He immediately refuses without hesitation, but her masochistic nature takes it as a challenge. And just like that, she's officially part of the group now. There's no going back. Since the city's people weren't exactly trustworthy, they didn't even give Hajime a leading role. But he steps up and gives a speech to rally the people, declaring that Aiko-sensei is a goddess. That's right. He says victory is guaranteed precisely because of her, and that all credit should go to her. On top of the barricade, Hajime's group begins a long-range assault, each using their most powerful area attacks. Claris's attacks are especially devastating, but her mana runs out quickly, so she ends up taking a little nap. With his long-range ammo running low, Hajime and Shay push forward, with Yue supporting from the rear. The two begin attacking the battalion leaders to confuse the army, since only the commanding monsters are under mind control. Their plan works, and the army starts to fall apart after suffering heavy losses. Hajime then confronts a man in black robes, whom he captures and brings back to the city. Aiko identifies the mysterious figure as Shimizu, a student who came to with her group, but disappeared shortly after. Shimizu had made a contract with the demon he met in the mountains, hoping to gain immense power in exchange for Aiko's head. She tries to reason with him, tries to help him start over, but Shimizu takes advantage of her compassion and grabs her as a hostage, demanding that Hajime hand over his weapons, which is answered with a solid nope. Shei's future-seeing ability kicks in when she tries to block a bullet heading toward Shimizu and Aiko. The poison needle on Aiko's neck comes in contact with the bullet, which grazes Shei and hits Shimizu's abdomen. Hajime then gives holy water to his poisoned teacher, does mouth-to-mouth, and then heals Shei's wound as he walks toward Shimizu. Aiko begs him to save her student, but Hajime assesses the situation and Shimizu's intentions before ending his suffering, a decision that breaks the teacher's heart. He tells her he doesn't believe in Shimizu's intentions, so he shoots and kills him. The teacher questions Hajime for doing that, and he says Shimizu was his enemy and wouldn't have changed. He and his group, with Will, move on to finish the mission. On the way back, his companions realize that Shimizu was too injured to be saved, and Hajime simply ended his suffering, so Aiko wouldn't have to bear the weight of seeing her student die under her care. Everyone knows Aiko is extremely kind, but not stupid. She'll eventually accept the truth and forgive her dear student. Once at the guild, Hajime and his companions deliver Will safely to Liwa and receive the promised status plates as a reward, plus a bonus for the new member. While everyone settles in for the night, Hajime chases a figure lurking in the alleys of the city, watching them. He's not concerned about their activities, because he's confident he could challenge even God if he stood in his way. Hearing these words, of course, reminds him of what his father told him while dying, that even though the true enemy, God himself, is powerful, one day someone strong enough will appear to kill him and free the world from his manipulation. Those same words, along with the powerful force that called her, led Claris to seek otherworldly travelers outside her clan's domain, which ultimately led her to meet Hajime. Hajime and Shei then explore the city together, and that's when they come across an aquarium. Inside the aquarium, they find a fish, the one they passed when an Amaleid expelled it from its labyrinth. Hajime and Lehman hit it off, and after realizing that they are the reason Lehman stopped in that aquarium, they decide to release him discreetly. Before Lehman goes on his way, he tells them both about a gang of slave traders who deal with beast people and how they have a little mermaid on their hands. He even tells Shei to be extra careful because of her race, and then he leaves. In another part of the city, we see Yue and Claris, who are going shopping and join in, enjoying their companions. Just then, Hajime senses someone underneath them, in the sewer. The presence seems to be that of a child, small and weak, so they decide to go down to investigate. The detection of a person is confirmed, and Hajime finds a girl called Merfolk, apparently a mermaid. She's passed out, because it looks like she's been kidnapped to be auctioned off by underground smugglers. Soon the smugglers realize that the girl has disappeared, and start scouring the entire city for her. Meanwhile, Hajime and Shei take the girl to the surface, where she regains consciousness. They introduce themselves to Mio, and take her for a hot bath and some food, before leaving her with the city guard, since her race is protected by the kingdom. Against Mio's will, they separate, after they hand her over to the guards, and she ends up crying because she wants to be with Hajime. Shortly afterwards, an explosion and smoke appear, coming from the same guard post. Hajime and Shei run back, and find the guards dead, and a message written on the wall, ordering him to hand over Shei or Mio, or die, which makes it very clear to Hajime that these guys are now his enemies. As they spread out across the city, regroup with Yui and Claris, joining in the hunt for the slavers' hideout. They split up into pairs and start eliminating the slave gangs all over the city while searching for Mio's location. Meanwhile, the auction begins with Mio at the center. At that moment, Hajime enters and shoots the organizer 3 times in the head. He picks up Mio and takes her to see the fireworks, while his companions finish off everyone in the hideout. With the little girl now safe, Hajime picks her up and reunites with his companions, while she gives her hero a new title, Daddy. And my god, what a crazy anime. Continuing the story, Hajime follows his group through a barren and rocky land to the town of Horaud. This is where it all began 4 months ago, when he was in this same place with his classmates, venturing into the labyrinth. The group sits down with Loa, the leader of the Outpost Guild, And it's at that moment that a guy comes in to tell Loa that a demon has been spotted in the labyrinth. Rajimi identifies the boy as Endo, one of his old classmates. He asks Rajimi to go down there and save the rest of his classmates, who are now facing the demon. When the group of heroes reached the 90th level of the labyrinth, they found no monster in sight, only blood splatters covering the floor. A red-haired demon lady stepped out of the shadows and offered them a chance to join them, just as she did with Shimizu. They refuse the offer and enter into combat with the huge numbers of monsters she summons, an Akimera, ogre, and a turtle pope who casts spells. The group fought to the best of their abilities, but the demon's ability to heal the monsters meant that they were fighting a losing battle. The barrier thrower was stabbed and seriously injured during the battle. It was then that Shizuko, Kaori's friend, ordered Endo to use his abilities to escape and told Captain Rogers what had happened. The Endo managed to do this, but Akimero pursued to the captain's location, so he was ordered to flee again, but this time to the surface, and warned everyone about the demonic threat they were facing. On the surface, Endo begs Hajime to save his former colleagues, even with the feelings he has for them. Meanwhile, underground, the hero Amanogawa and his group manage to escape from the demon. Fear sows doubt among them, because Daisuke wants to join the demon in order to survive. It is at this moment that Captain Rogers catches up with the heroes' group, but is shot down by the demon Chimera. The captain's death infuriates Amanogawa, who breaks his own boundaries, killing the demon's monsters and forcing the demon to retreat. However, when he realizes that the demon is also human, in that moment of hesitation, his pets attack and injure the hero. Shizuko tries to buy time, but the demon's monsters prove to be too powerful, and she ends up falling on the battlefield too. Kaori rushes to save her friend, but with her hand exhausted, there's nothing more she can do but accept her and Shizuko's fate. As they come face to face with two giant minotaurs, and their hopes fading, the monster tries to attack them. But before they can attack, a giant rod penetrates the ceiling and impales the two monsters, killing them instantly. The dust from the impact dissipates. As Rajime stands in front of them, it only took one bullet for the monster to die for good. Rajime and his companions run through the labyrinth, but decide that the quickest way is down a hole in the ground. When Rajime lands in front of his old group of adventurers, Kaori instantly recognizes the identity of her savior, and everyone is surprised, since he should be dead. As Yu, Shay, Claris, Miyu, and Endo fall and reach the group, the monsters gather for another attack. Rajime orders his companions to spread out and protect Amanogawa's group, while he alone begins his attack on his new enemies. He wields his two revolvers with skill, while the monsters drop like flies. Kaori and the others watch in amazement as the man they knew as Rajim defeats the monsters as if they were nothing. Papa Turtle fires a beam attack at Rajim, and using a relic shield, he deflects the attack onto the demon, destroying the bird creature she used to heal herself. His companions easily fend off any attack on the wounded, while the demon makes her last desperate attack on Rajime. She casts her magic called Total Imprisonment, enveloping the whole shebang. Reassured by what she has seen, Miyu shouts to her father, which draws Kaori's attention. The demon runs away, but Rajime asks her to leave, while he gets rid of her magic. He asks her how she managed to get her hands on those monsters, but she refuses to answer, so he puts 2 bullets in her leg, which surprises her former companions. From what little information she has, Rajime concludes that the creation of the monsters was a form of ancient magic, which was provided by someone she knows. As she is no longer useful, he intends to end her life. She warns him that her lover will come for revenge. Amanogawa tries to convince him that she is no longer a threat, and Rajime doesn't think twice before shooting her. Daisuke sees what has happened, and panic sets in. With Captain Ross's propped up, everyone involved gets together. Kaori can't believe Rajime is still alive, and starts crying while leaning on him, while Yui and Shay look on with murderous intent. They all make their way back to the labyrinth, while Amanogawa and Rajime's ideals clash over the demon's death. Rajime makes it clear that he no longer has any ties to that place, and that he will kill anyone who gets in his way, even them. He says that it was because he owed Kaori, and that when they left the list, it was goodbye forever. After they reach the surface, Kaori musters up the courage to confess her love for Rajime, and her desire to join his group. He then promptly refuses, saying that his only love is Yui, but even so, Kaori insists on accompanying him, in the hope of eventually winning him over. Yui accepts, and allows her to join the group, to prove that she is Rajime's one true love. Kaori is now an official member of Rajime's party, and his love only continues to grow. After getting strange about Papa's business, he tells her to get ready to leave the next day. Kaori says goodbye to Chizuko and the rest of her old companions, while Rajime conjures up a jeep, which will now be full of women fighting for his love. Rajime and his companions set off to find a way back to their world, not allowing anything, not even a god, to stand in their way. As they drive through the desert out of nowhere, they are attacked by a sandworm. And look, I don't know where Rajime learned to drive like that, but he's doing very well dodging the worms. But still, it's going to be a problem if that thing reaches them. So Rajime decides to use his anti-tank missiles and shoots it with other worms. The worms turn into big chunks of meat, and with the path cleared, Rajime and the others manage to continue their journey. But a few meters ahead, they spot a group of sandworms gathered around something. Rajime gets curious, so he pulls out the car's machine gun and starts firing until all the worms are gone. Now the way is clear, and they see that there is a man lying on the ground. Normally Rajime wouldn't get involved, but since Kaori is a priestess, she wants to help him. And Rajime honestly wants to find out how the guy managed to survive so long in the desert, without being eaten. They drive to him and Kaori examines his body, only to discover that he's suffering from extreme mana overload. Basically, he's ingested some kind of poison, which is causing all the mana in his body to go haywire. So if he doesn't get help soon, he's going to die. For the time being, Kaori is a spell to drain some of the man's mana and stabilize his condition. But unless they find a cure for the disease, his mana will soon get out of control again. The man eventually wakes up, so they take him to the car. First, he thanks them for saving his life, and he introduces himself as Bizi, who is a son of Duke Yankaji. Coincidentally, Yankaji is the very town that Rajime and the others are going to, and from the way Bizi is acting, it looks like the town is facing some kind of trouble. Rajime asks Bizi to explain the situation. Then he tells him that a few days ago, the citizens of Yankaji started suffering from fevers and severe convulsions. They did some investigating and discovered that the oasis on which the people of Yankaji depended had been poisoned. Only so far they haven't been able to find out how it happened or who might be responsible. Looking on the bright side, there is a cure for this mana overload, which is a mineral known as dead stone. It can calm a person's mana when it is ingested. The thing is, this dead stone can only be found in the Gruen volcano. Normally, Bizi would have sent some adventurers from Yankaji to mine the dead stone, but all of them are also suffering from mana overload. And even if they weren't sick, an ordinary adventurer wouldn't make it past the desert, since Yankaji is almost completely out of drinking water. So Bizi decided to go in search of help himself, but ended up fainting because of the mana overload. Luckily, he found a group of gold-ranked adventurers and asked them to help save Yankaji. Soon they arrive at the Duchy of Yankaji, and the situation there is just as bad as Bizi had described. Countless people are suffering from mana overload and are also dehydrated, but Rajime and his group are ready to help them. First, Yui uses her powers to create a well, then Rajime finishes paving the bottom, and Yui uses magic to fill it with water. The Duke of Yankaji is surprised that Yui has been able to create so much water in such a short period of time, but using all that magic has made Yui feel exhausted, so she turns to Rajime and starts sucking his blood. Now that the water situation has been resolved, it's time to deal with the poisoned oasis. As soon as Rajime takes a look at it with his demon eye, he realizes that something is wrong. He pulls out some grenades and throws them into the oasis. A few seconds later, the grenades explode and a slime monster emerges from the oasis. The Duke had no idea something like that was in his oasis, and Rajime explains that this creature is likely the source of the poison in the water, although he has no idea who put it there in the first place. But now, all he needs to do is defeat it, so he points his weapon at the sludge's magic core and fires a shot straight through it. The slime was finally killed, so it will no longer produce poison. But as for the poison already in the water, it will take some time before it is fully purified. Fortunately, the oasis is connected to a fresh water source, so eventually it should return to normal, and the water Yui made should be enough to last until then. Back in the city's main hall, Kaori Yasha is helping treat everyone suffering from mana overload, but the only way to cure them permanently is with dead stone. Rajime agrees to go collect some from the Gruen volcano, however, it is far too dangerous for Miu to go with them, so Rajime asks Kaori to stay behind and take care of Miu while they are away. They travel through the desert, and after crossing a horde of sandworms, they finally arrive at the Gruen volcano. The heat is scorching and already starting to make the others uncomfortable, but Claris does not seem to mind. After some walking, they reach the main entrance of the volcano, and shortly after entering, Rajime spots some dead stones on the ceiling of the cave. Unfortunately, there are only small fragments here, so it won't be enough to heal the people of Ankaji. If they want to find a sufficient amount of stone, they will need to go deeper into the volcano. They arrive at the base of the stairway, and from this point on, they are entering the volcano. From here forward, they are officially in uncharted territory, so they must be ready for anything. At that moment, a fire attack is launched at the group, and Yue uses her magic to block it. Rajime prepares to eliminate the lava bowl that attacked them, but before he shoots, Ashea asks to take the lead. She wants to test the new hammer Rajime made, especially for her. Rajime agrees and lets Ashea handle the bull. She charges in full force, and with a massive strike, she completely shatters the bull, breaking its head without hesitation. She is amazed by the hammer's effectiveness, but also a little alarmed as it converts mana into kinetic energy, and the force she can generate with it is immense. After descending further into the volcano, the group finds a cave filled to the brim with dead stones. There is more than enough to save the people of Yonkaji. So now, the mission is to clear the great labyrinth inside the volcano. They sail along the lava in a small boat, and after narrowly avoiding becoming barbecue from lava falls, the group discovers a hidden island deep inside the volcano. A real secret island. Rajime wants to check it out, but suddenly a burst of fire comes at him, forcing the group to abandon the boat. There are fire-breathing lava serpents guarding the area, so if they want to reach the island, they will have to defeat all the snakes. And to note, there are over 100 of them, so it will take a while. The group works together to destroy the body and mana core of each serpent, one by one. But just as Rajime finishes the last one, he is struck by a beam of light that appears out of nowhere. He remains in one piece, but the explosion knocks him unconscious. He begins to fall, and Yue has to use magic to save him. After getting him to safety, she tries to give him some holy water to heal his wounds, but nothing seems to work. Suddenly, a barrage of explosions rains down from the sky, so Yue casts a magic shield to protect herself. When the attack ends, she's exhausted, and then they hear a voice from above. Freddy appears, delighted that his ambush worked, even more pleased that it was successful, but he can't believe Rajime survived a full energy blast from Uranus magic. Rajime finally regains consciousness and sees Freddy in the sky. He starts to grasp the situation. Freddy acquired God-era magic and became an apostle, now willing to do whatever it takes to fulfill his god's will. Freddy then activates God-era magic and opens a spatial rift, which allows him to sneak up on Rajime and hurl him into the volcano. The girls want to help, but they're too busy fending off dragons, so Rajime is on his own for now. He tries to use Limit Break to shield himself from the blast, but still gets knocked down, and Freddy gives him no chance to recover. Rajime summons his crossbeats to counter the attack, and with them guarding him, he slowly advances toward Freddy. At that moment, Freddy and his dragon are struck down by Claris in her dragon form. She fires a beam at his dragon, and it fires back at her, locking them in combat. While Freddy is distracted, Rajime sneaks behind and strikes his chest, then kicks him across the sky. He was about to follow up with another attack, but Freddy's dragon swoops in to save him and helps him escape. Rajime tries to pursue, but his body finally gives in to all the stress, and he begins to fall into the lava. But at the last second, Claris appears and carries him back to safety. Freddy is shocked by the strength of Rajime's allies, and slightly shaken, realizing he was nearly defeated by an exhausted Rajime. So he changes tactics to defeat him, using a magical device to manipulate the volcano's magma flow. Freddy then uses all his magic to remove it, and now the volcano is about to erupt, taking Rajime and the entire labyrinth with it. There isn't much time, and with Freddy blocking the exit, they can't all escape. So Rajime gives Claris his cross ring and asks her to flee alone. Rajime fully intends to survive, but for now, Claris is the only one who can escape. He needs her to deliver the dead stone stored in the ring to the people of Ankaji. Claris understands, so she flies straight out of the volcano before Freddy can seal it. Freddy's dragons fire at her, trying to stop her escape, but Yue and Shay provide cover, and Rajime's crossbeat keeps Freddy occupied, allowing Claris to break through. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom, Liliana was trying to talk to her father, but when she finally gets his attention, he looks at her like she's a criminal. And that's not the only strange thing. All the guards seem like they've smoked something they shouldn't have, and both the king and the guards completely ignore Liliana and walk away. She knows something is wrong, but isn't sure what. She starts heading back to her room when she notices Shizuko in the courtyard, training as usual. She's pushing herself hard because she hates being too weak to do anything against the demon, so she wants to grow stronger. But she pauses when she sees a cute cat on the ground. She starts playing with the cat, but realizes Liliana has been watching her the whole time. She gets a bit embarrassed. But after calming down, Shizuko asks Liliana if there's any news from the castle officials. Liliana says they told her that Amanagawa needs to become strong enough to defeat the demons. Shizuko asks what the officials really mean by that, and from what she's heard, it seems they plan to label Amanagawa as an enemy of the kingdom. Meanwhile, in the forest, Daisuke is completely unhinged because he's furious Rajime is still alive. Suddenly, a voice from behind asks him why he's so upset that Rajime survived. But honestly, it makes sense. Rajime did take Kaori with him. Daisuke tells the girl to shut up, warning her not to blackmail him for trying to kill Rajime since he's still alive. But attempted murder is still serious, and if the others find out, they'll surely turn against him. However, the girl says she's willing to keep everything secret if Daisuke helps with her plan. In return, she promises Kaori will be his. Claris finally returns to Ankaji, but she's exhausted and collapses at the city gate. Kaori runs to see what happened. After treating her wounds, Kaori and Mio bring her inside to rest. When Claris finally wakes up, she explains the surprise attack they suffered and how they got trapped inside the volcano. Kaori is extremely worried, but she knows Rajime will find a way to survive, no matter what. Speaking of Rajime, it seems he and the other girls managed to escape the volcano, but he's still in critical condition, so it'll take some time to recover. On the bright side, Yue notices that the effects of the dragon's light poison from the explosion are starting to fade, so Rajime should recover quickly. And even though they're in the middle of the ocean, Yue is already planning to give him special training, in heavy quotation marks. While she does that, Rajime recalls what happened inside the volcano when the magma began to rise. They had no way out, but then found a side door in the volcano and entered it, trying to avoid getting roasted. Luckily, the interior was magma-proof, so they were safe, for now. And even luckier, they discovered the room had spatial magic from an ancient god, so Yue was able to analyze the spell. But it's going to take some time before she can actually use it properly, so she still can't teleport everyone out. They need to find another way out, so Hajime suggests that maybe they just need to swim through the lava. The others think that's completely insane, but knowing Hajime, he definitely has some plan in mind, so they agree. They open the doors, and as the room starts to flood with magma, Yue puts up a barrier around them. The barrier won't last forever, but then Hajime summons his latest invention, a submarine. He had built a submarine precisely for a situation like this, where they might need to explore underwater labyrinths. And by sheer luck, Hajime had also made the submarine lava-proof, so everyone boarded the submarine and dove into the magma, until eventually they were caught in a current and spat out into the ocean. That explains how they ended up in the ocean, but they have no idea which part of the ocean this is. Hajime could probably figure out where they are if he had his cross ring, but he gave it to Kaori, so for now, they're completely lost. Suddenly, their submarine is approached by merfolk, who accuse Hajime of kidnapping one of their children. Hajime guesses they must be talking about Mio, but before he can explain anything, one of the merfolk attacks Shay, so he punches him underwater. The other guards try to fight, but they're no match for Hajime's group, so they're knocked out. This is what happens when people get impatient. Then Hajime hears Mio's voice coming from the sky. He looks up and sees Mio jumping toward him, falling from Kaori's back, so he jumps to catch her. She's really happy to see him again, but when they land, Hajime gives her a stern look. He scolds her seriously for jumping from the sky like that. Turns out they're pretty close to Harrison, so they gather the unconscious guards and start heading to the city. When they arrive, Mio says she wants to see her mother. As soon as Mio's mother hears that her daughter is back, she runs to meet her, even with a broken leg. When they finally reunite, she's relieved that Mio is safe, but also confused when Mio calls Hajime daddy, since she doesn't remember remarrying. Back at the palace, Shizuku happens to find Aiko in the hallway, so the two of them sit down to talk. Shizuku shares everything she's heard about Hajime, and thinking about it, she remembers that Aiko had a meeting with Hajime some time ago, so she asks about the details. Aiko remembers the moment, and immediately insists she didn't do anything illegal, since Hajime is 18, but Shizuku has no idea what she's talking about. Aiko had a meeting with the king to discuss Hajime's situation, and unfortunately, the royal family decided to label Hajime as a heretic. Aiko tries to oppose the idea, since Hajime hasn't done anything against the kingdom, but no matter how much she tried to convince them, their minds were already made up. And now that she thinks about it, all the council members seemed kind of high and depressed at the same time. Now that Mio is safe with her mom, Hajime decides to explore the Merluza sunken labyrinth with the others. They dive into a trench on the seafloor in Hajime's submarine and eventually find the entrance to the labyrinth, leading them into a cave. From there, they'll have to continue on foot, so they start walking through the labyrinth and eventually come to a cavern. As soon as they enter, the entrance seals behind them, and suddenly they're attacked by purple sludge. Yue puts up a magical shield to protect everyone, but the sludge seems capable of melting magic, so she can't hold it for long. Leros finds out he can burn the sludge with his flames, but the monster keeps regenerating, so the only way to defeat it seems to be by destroying its mana crystal. But Hajime says that thing doesn't have a magic crystal. He's looking at it with his demon eye right now, and the whole thing is glowing red, so its entire body is basically the mana crystal. And the same goes for the walls of the room, which means they might be trapped inside the monster's stomach. If that's the case, they don't stand a chance by fighting normally, so Hajime starts thinking of a way to escape. He notices some water leaking from the ground, and that gives him an idea. He draws his weapon and shoots the ground, creating a hole for everyone to escape through. His plan works, but they all end up in a flooded section of the cave, and Kaori is already out of breath and can't make it. So Hajime leaves Yue and goes back to rescue Kaori. Eventually, Kaori wakes up on a beach with Hajime, and she wonders why he chose to save her instead of Yue. She was probably expecting him to say something about how much he cares about her, but the truth is he trusts Yue to survive on her own. But he knew Kaori wouldn't have stood a chance in that place. At least for now, they just need to keep exploring the labyrinth until they reach the bottom. As they walk through the fields, they find a shipwreck, and suddenly the area starts to change, and they're pulled into an illusion of a war that happened centuries ago. People are being slaughtered everywhere, so Kaori tries to save one of the men, but as she starts healing him, he just vanishes. They're surrounded by soldiers on the ship, and all of them seem insane, screaming that they'll kill all heretics in God's name. After killing all the illusions, the area returns to normal, but Kaori is still wondering what the point of all that was. Hajime thinks the illusion must have been based on real past events. Kaori feels sick at the thought that all this tragedy was caused by a mad god, so Hajime takes her somewhere safe to rest. He understands what it's like to lose your mind after seeing something horrific. After all, if Yue hadn't been by his side when he got trapped in the labyrinth, who knows where he'd be now? Hearing Hajime talk like that about Yue makes Kaori jealous, so she asks Hajime if he thinks she's a burden. And yes, he bluntly tells her that she's getting in his way. When she first joined the group, Hajime treated her harshly, hoping she'd give up and stop following him, but she kept insisting on staying close. Hajime then tells Kaori that he's in love with Yue, and nothing will change that. Hearing this breaks Kaori's heart, so she decides it's better to stay away from him. Back at the palace, Aiko is on her way to meet her students and tell them what she knows. But before she gets there, she's stopped by a nun. Aiko asks her to get out of the way, but the nun says she's there to take Aiko to the Divine Mountain, and she won't take no for an answer. The nun tries to hypnotize Aiko with her charm ability, but due to Aiko's divine status, she's immune to it. Unfortunately, that doesn't make her immune to fists, so the nun just punches her in the stomach to knock her out. The nun starts dragging Aiko away to make sure no one sees, but Princess Liliana saw everything and needs to tell someone before it's too late. Hajime and Kaori continue through the shipyard and come across a giant ship in the middle of the field. They board it, and as soon as they do, another illusion starts. It seems this illusion might not be so bad at first. The king of the time is throwing a party to celebrate peace between humans and demi-humans. But then, a few seconds into the banquet, the king reveals he's still just as prejudiced, and the real reason for the party is to kill what he calls filthy animals pretending to be equal to humans, all in the name of their god Erit. Seeing this carnage again makes Kaori feel sick, but they have to keep going, so they head toward the ship's corridor. As they walk, a dark snowstorm approaches, and Kaori gets separated from Hajime after a wind trap is triggered. Hajime tries to follow her, but is surrounded by soldiers and has to fight them off. After defeating them, he starts searching for Kaori again, and soon finds her in a dark and suspicious corner. Hajime senses something is wrong, so just to be safe, he shoots a magic bullet straight into Kaori's head. She falls to the ground screaming in pain and asks why he did that, but Hajime just shoots her again without hesitation. He's already figured out something is possessing Kaori's body, but the ghost just laughs, thinking Hajime can't do anything about it. But Hajime points his weapon again, ready to fire another magic bullet. The spirit starts panicking and reminds him that it's Kaori's body, and even if the bullets won't kill her, he can't keep shooting. Hajime lowers his weapon for a second to think, but still ends up shooting more bullets. He knows the spirit won't leave Kaori just because he stops, so he keeps going, knowing how much pain the magic bullets cause. He keeps firing until the damned ghost leaves Kaori's body. The spirit realizes Hajime isn't bluffing, and that taking hit after hit isn't worth it, so it gives up and lets go of Kaori. After that, the spirit vanishes, and Hajime approaches Kaori to check if she's still alive. And yes, she is. As soon as she wakes up, Kaori just kisses Hajime. He's surprised and asks why she did that. She replies that she's just answering his question. Kaori admits she's in love with Hajime. Even knowing he loves Yue more than anything, she still wants to stay by his side no matter what. Right after that, they find a magic circle that teleports the two of them to the final area of the labyrinth, and it looks like the rest of the group made it there too. They head toward the center, and Yue starts analyzing the magic circle. Meanwhile, back at the castle, the other students start realizing something is wrong. It's been 3 days since Aiko supposedly went to the Divine Mountain, and no one's heard from her. As for Aiko, we learn she's being held captive, and a nun tells her that her power is inconvenient, so until the right time comes, they're going to keep her imprisoned. After seeing everything she's seen, Princess Liliana is on the run, not knowing who she can trust. Everyone's been acting strangely lately, and she's sure something serious is going on, but she can't do anything alone. Meanwhile, in a training room, all the transferred soldiers are being gathered for some plan, and it looks like Daisuke is involved too. At the same time, the Demon King tells his soldiers that he received a decree from their god, and because of that, they will march to eradicate all heretics. Back in the kingdom of High Lake, Rogans realizes that something called the Void is affecting people in the castle, and unfortunately, it has already spread to 30% of the army, including leaders and officers. He asks Jose to help gather everyone who knows about dark magic so they can prepare countermeasures against the Void. Meanwhile, he returns to his office to prepare some letters. He wants to send those letters to the Duke of Ankaji and to Hajime, in case something happens to him. But suddenly someone knocks on his door, and he immediately gets nervous. So he draws his sword and prepares to fight, but then sees it's Daisuke, who he still trusts. Not knowing any better, right? He sheathes his sword and lets him in. He asks Daisuke if there's something he wants to discuss, but Daisuke keeps tapping his foot on the ground without saying a word. Suddenly there's another knock at the door. This time it's Jose. As soon as Rogans opens the door, Jose immediately tries to stab him in the face. From the look in Jose's eyes, Rogans can tell he must be affected by the Void, so he prepares to fight him. But while his back is turned, Daisuke stabs him. But Rogans isn't the knight captain for nothing. Before Daisuke can land a fatal blow, he casts a wind spell that blows everyone away. The soldiers get up and try to attack him, while Daisuke prepares to cast a spell. But Rogans is too experienced to let that happen, so he throws Daisuke against a wall to interrupt the spell and knocks out 2 more soldiers. The last one is Jose, the vice captain. Jose is a bit stronger than the others, but still no match for Rogans, so he gets thrown into the corner of a table. Normally, Jose would be seeing stars, but because he's affected by the Void, he just gets up again. Rogans has no idea how all this happened or why Daisuke betrayed him, but more Void-affected guards start showing up, so he doesn't plan to stick around and find out. He jumps straight out the window, and after landing, he's about to fire a blast at his office to delay Daisuke and the soldiers, but then he realizes he's not alone, and before he can tell what hit him, he's killed by a magic explosion. The next morning, Hajime and his group are traveling across a field when they come across a caravan being attacked by some bandits. Kaori thanks him for agreeing to help the caravan, but in truth, Hajime was just looking for an excuse to use his minigun on someone. As soon as he starts firing, the bandits drop like flies. He doesn't intend to leave anyone alive, but in the middle of all this, there are some innocent people who were wounded during the bandit attacks. So Hajime tells Kaori to heal the injured. While she's busy healing, a girl runs up to her and reveals that she's Princess Liliana. Liliana had fled the castle hoping to find someone who could help her after seeing everything going on there. By chance, she ended up finding Hajime and the others. She explains that everyone in the castle started acting very strange, even her father, who is now defending the church tooth and nail. At first, she thought he just wanted to improve relations between the church and the kingdom, but it goes far beyond that. Liliana tells Hajime that Aiko was kidnapped by a nun from the Divine Mountain, Hajime immediately suspects this has something to do with Aiko's connection to him, so he decides to rescue her from the prison, and it turns out to be much easier than expected. Hajime simply approaches the cell where Aiko is being held and uses transmute 3 times to create a hole in the wall. At that exact moment, pure coincidence, the demon army begins invading the kingdom. Even though he wasn't expecting this, Hajime sees a perfect opportunity to escape amidst the chaos without being noticed. But then, out of nowhere, an attack is launched directly at him, and the explosion completely disintegrates the prison. Hajime manages to get out of the way with Aiko just in time, but now they have to face Noint, one of the apostles of the god Ahit. Noint attacks Hajime, and he tries shooting at her, but she blocks all the bullets and nearly drives a blade into his chest. Luckily, Hajime dodges in time and creates distance using his crossfire arsenal. But since he's still protecting Aiko, it puts him at a disadvantage against Noint. All he can do is dodge and defend her attacks. Even so, Noint is surprised that Hajime can keep up with her movements, even while carrying extra weight. She admits he's strong, but tells him he's not worthy of becoming one of Ahit's pawns. Hajime takes it as a compliment, replying that he would never want to be a pawn of a spoiled brat like Ahit. Then he calls out the truth, asking Noint if she really has time to fight him right now. The kingdom is being attacked by demons, and if she doesn't do something, it'll be destroyed. But Noint has no intention of helping the kingdom. If it has to be destroyed, then so be it. That's Ahit's will. Hajime now realizes that Ahit sees people as nothing more than pawns to be killed for entertainment. At this point, he wouldn't even be surprised if he found out Ahit is worshipped by the demons too, and that this whole war was planned for fun. And apparently, he nailed it. So Noint asks Hajime what he plans to do about it. Hajime honestly doesn't care. He'd even gladly step aside if it meant they'd send him back to his original world. But Noint flatly tells him that's not going to happen. Ahit hates Hajime because Hajime overcame every challenge in his way and became absurdly powerful, and Ahit despises that. He wants Hajime to die a humiliating and painful death. It's a lot to take in, but Hajime now understands there's no reasoning with Noint. At that moment, Claris appears and blows Noint out of the sky with her dragon breath. Hajime has never been so happy to see her. He climbs onto Claris's back and asks her to take Aiko away from there. Claris flies off, and Hajime turns to face Noint. She casts a fireball spell at him. Hajime dodges and fires his machine gun at her. But Noint is too fast to be hit by it, so Hajime tries to blast her with his point-blank cannon. However, Noint vanishes and reappears behind him, forcing Hajime to block her attack with the cannon. Now Hajime is running low on options, since nothing he's tried has even scratched her. She attacks again, and Hajime tries to grab her swords, but she's too strong. He jumps back to gain space, but in that movement, he ends up getting cut. Then he notices something. The swords Noint is using are starting to take damage. That sparks an idea in Hajime's mind. He summons crosses and turns them into energy blasts aimed at Noint. She comes out unharmed, but Hajime never intended to hit her with that attack. He then pulls out 2 rings and throws them at her, but she knocks them away easily. At this point, Noint thinks Hajime is finally out of options if he's resorting to such desperate moves. But then Hajime draws his guns and points them at the 2 rings beside him. These rings are spatially connected, so when he fires his bullets, the shots come out right next to Noint, forcing her to block them with her swords. As a result, both of her swords break. That gives Hajime the opening to bind her with a magic rope. Now she has nowhere to escape. He loads his anti-tank weapon and pierces her with a 12-inch thick rod. There's no coming back from that wound, so she dies and falls from the sky. Now that the church is done for, Hajime goes to check on Claris and Aiko, and it turns out they blew up the whole church. Claris had planned to just set it on fire, but Aiko wanted to help, so she used some magic and accidentally created a bunch of methane. The methane was way more powerful than she expected, and Claris is impressed. She never could have destroyed the whole church on her own. Not to mention Aiko is incredibly powerful, even considering all the people who died inside. After Claris says this, Aiko realizes she just killed several people, and she feels immense remorse. Hajime understands how she must be feeling, so he comforts her, saying everything will be okay. At that moment, a figure appears from the ruins of the church, and it doesn't look like a survivor. Hajime gets curious and asks the man who he is, but the man stays silent and points to a magic circle on the ground. The circle looks just like the one from the Great Labyrinth, so the 3 of them step on it and get teleported to the Great Labyrinth. Once there, they enter another magic circle. This spell allows soul manipulation. It can even be used to transfer a soul from one vessel to another. If something like this exists, Aiko believes there must be a spell somewhere that could send them back to Japan. But aside from that, they need to hurry back to the capital, which they believe is still under attack by demons, and their classmates don't really recognize Hajime's companions all that well. Earlier that day, after hearing all the commotion outside, Shizuku and another group of girls got worried and went to look for Amanogawa to find out what was happening. At that moment, one of the Void Soldiers approaches and informs them that the demon army is attacking the capital, and they need to go to the stadium to prepare for battle. They agree, and as they head to the stadium, Shizuku notices something strange. She tells everyone to stay alert, but suddenly they're blinded by an arrow. While everyone is blinded, the guards turn on them and stab them in the back. Shizuku is the only one left standing, but she has no idea why this is happening or what to do. At that moment, her personal maid runs up to her, pretending to be injured. But as soon as she gets close, she stabs Shizuku in the back and slams her face into the ground. Eri then starts laughing. Everything went exactly as she planned. She walks over to Amanogawa and is thrilled to finally have him all to herself. Then she kisses him for an uncomfortably long time. Shizuku asks why she's doing all this, and Eri explains that she's been in love with Amanogawa for a long time. But instead of confessing her love like a normal person, she decided it would be more effective to kill everyone around him and then kidnap him, so he could never leave her. Shizuku asks if that's also why everyone in the castle has been acting weird lately. Eri explains that they've all been dead for a while, and she used her necromancy to reanimate their bodies and restore some of their memories, so they could act like normal people, except for the drugged-out look. Eri always hated all her classmates for getting in the way of her one-sided relationship with Amanogawa, but she especially hated Shizuku, so she's really going to enjoy watching her die. But just before Eri can stab Shizuku, she's blown away, carried off by the wind. The one responsible is Kaori. Kaori immediately starts casting a healing spell to help all her classmates recover. But just before she finishes the spell, she's stabbed in the back by Daisuke. Daisuke is thrilled to have finally killed Kaori, knowing Eri can now revive her and turn her into her personal slave. But Kaori doesn't give up. Even with a sword through her chest, she finishes the healing spell and saves all her classmates. The spell also begins to heal her, so it seems she might survive. But Daisuke pushes the sword in deeper, and the light finally fades from Kaori's eyes. Seeing this, Amanogawa becomes so enraged that he breaks free from his shackles and vows he will never forgive Eri for what she did. He raises his sword and unleashes a celestial strike, tearing through the army of soldiers and undead to reach Eri. But in the end, Amanogawa collapses to the ground and starts coughing up blood. It turns out that when Eri kissed him earlier, she actually gave him a poison that left him paralyzed. And now that Amanogawa is out of the way, no one can stop her. Eri is about to use her magic to turn Kaori into a puppet, but at the last second, Rajime appears. He doesn't know exactly what's going on, but he can see that Kaori is hurt, and that Daisuke and Eri are behind it. So he gets behind Daisuke and punches him into the wall. Laris and Aiko arrive shortly afterward, and Rajime asks them to take care of Kaori. Kaori is already dead, so healing magic won't help much, but maybe they can at least tie her soul back to her body to prevent her from dying completely. Meanwhile, we see what Rajime did to Daisuke. Eri realizes she's next, so she tries to bargain with him. She promises to revive Kaori and leave her there. But even if she manages to bring Kaori back, Kaori would be trapped as a puppet forever. So Rajime isn't interested at all. He's about to shoot Eri in the head when suddenly Daisuke attacks him from behind, trying to catch him by surprise. But Rajime easily grabs him. Rajime grabs him by the neck, while Daisuke complains about how unfair it is that Kaori likes Rajime instead of him. Rajime then throws Daisuke out of the stadium. Unfortunately for Daisuke, he lands right in the middle of a swarm of hungry demons. Now, without a script to protect him, Daisuke is finally dead. Rajime turns to deal with Eri, but out of nowhere, Frid teleports in. He wants revenge for the humiliation he suffered at Rajime's hands. He says that the demons have surrounded the stadium and there's nothing Rajime can do to stop them from destroying the kingdom and killing his friends. But Rajime doesn't care what happens to the kingdom. Frid starts getting really angry at Rajime and pulls an item from his inventory, using it to summon his famous death laser. In seconds, all the demons in the area are vaporized, meaning Frid no longer has any chance of winning. He is forced to retreat, but before leaving he takes Eri with him, as she's still a valuable piece for him. Yui and Shay appear shortly after Frid leaves, and Rajime asks them to help keep Kaori's soul connected to her body. Shizuko is still devastated by Kaori's death, But Rajime tells her to have faith in their team, because no matter what happens, he won't give up. The next morning, reconstruction efforts for the kingdom begin, and Liliana is now the new ruling monarch. According to Dano's reports, the attack on the kingdom was also Aries' fault. She contacted the demons and leaked information that allowed them to invade the capital. She did all this just to live out her fantasy with Amanagawa. However, the brainwashing and the king's assassination were the work of the nun from the Divine Mountain, but she has vanished and can't be located. As for the heroes, they're all training at the stadium, but Shizuko keeps looking up at the sky, waiting for Rajime's return. He promised to bring Kaori back to life, but Amanagawa still doesn't trust him, so he doubts Rajime will actually come back. But a few moments later, Rajime and his friends fall from the sky and land in the middle of the stadium. Shizuko is overjoyed to see Rajime and runs to him, asking if he was able to save Kaori. Rajime says Kaori is fine, but that she's a little different now. He asks Shizuko to promise not to get mad. Shizuko doesn't understand what he means. Then Kaori also drops into the stadium, but for some reason, she looks like Noit. Rajime explains that he used soul magic from the Age of Gods to protect Kaori's soul. With her soul stabilized, they took it and placed it into Noit's body. Shizuko sort of understands, but asks why they decided to put Kaori's soul into Noit's body. Rajime explains that they could have put it into her original body, but Kaori herself asked to be placed in Noit's body. That way she'd become stronger. Shizuko is incredibly grateful that Rajime saved her best friend, so she swears that if he ever needs anything from her, she'll definitely repay the favor. Rajime says she doesn't need to worry about that, because everything he did was to save a friend. But besides that, he has something very important to say. Rajime explains that the god Eris is using everyone as pawns, just to enjoy their suffering. Amanagawa is furious when he learns that everything they've been fighting for was a lie. He asks why Rajime didn't tell them sooner, but even if he had, they wouldn't have believed him at the time. Later, while everyone is having dinner, Shizuko asks Rajime where he plans to go next. He says he plans to head to the Great Labyrinth, and the path he'll take cuts through the Empire. Liliana asks if she can go with him. After all, she's now the new ruler of the kingdom and has many matters to discuss with the player, so she wants to meet him as soon as possible. Rajime doesn't mind, so she goes with them. Amanagawa says that he and the rest of the class are going too, because he wants to become the new king of the kingdom. He and the rest of the class also want to become stronger with magic from the Age of Gods, so they can save everyone. Since Rajime clearly doesn't care about that, all his classmates feel the same. They also want to be strong enough to protect themselves and their friends. So Rajime ends up agreeing to take them all along. But that doesn't mean he's being nice. He's just thinking they'll make good meat shields when they reach the Great Labyrinth. And that's the end of our video. If you want to see the next part, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss anything. Comment transmutation below, so we know you watched until the end. And that's it, folks. God bless, thanks, and see you next time.